Get that cleaning lady out of my range. Gunnery Sergeant Marcus Reeves's voice exploded across Whiskey Jack range. His face was purple with rage as he jabbed a finger at the small woman kneeling by the target markers. This is a restricted military zone. Bang, bang, bang. 3 more shots missed the target at 1,700 yards. Shot number 125, 126, 127. Each miss brought his force recon team closer to mission failure. Sabrina Williams slowly stood, dust on her faded maintenance uniform. She was maybe 5 feet 4 inches, 130 pounds. The kind of woman you'd pass without a second glance. "Sir, your wind flags are lying to you," she said quietly. "The thermal layer at 900 yards is flowing opposite direction. Your ballistic computer can't see it, but watch the grass shimmer. You're aiming for yesterday's wind." Reeves stepped closer, using his 6 feet 2 inches frame to intimidate. "Lady, I've been shooting since before you learned to walk. Take your folk wisdom and get off my range." Sabrina didn't move. Something shifted in her pale green eyes. Something cold, dangerous. "What if I told you I could hit all 3 targets with 1 shot?" The morning sun blazed down on the Marine Corps Mountain Warfare Training Center at 8,500 feet elevation. This wasn't just training, this was final qualification for deployment to Syria, where precision shots meant the difference between mission success and body bags. Staff Sergeant Elena Torres lowered her spotting scope. "Gunny, the computer says a steady wind at 15 miles per hour from northwest, but these shots are drifting like we're in a hurricane." Corporal James Williams wiped sweat from his brow. "My ballistic solution should be perfect. Range verified, barometric pressure accounted for, even calculated for Coriolis effect. I don't understand." Sergeant Davis stared at his equipment in disbelief. The Barrett M82, the $18,000 Schmidt and Bender scope, the ballistic computer, yet target after target remained untouched. "This is ridiculous," Reeves barked. "Best equipment, best training, best Marines in the world, and we can't hit a stationary target." Behind a safety barrier, Sabrina continued deadheading roses along the range perimeter. To any observer, she was exactly what she appeared, a civilian contractor keeping the base presentable. Her positioning wasn't random. She could see every wind flag from 400 to 1,700 yards, and more importantly, the invisible air currents no computer could predict. Rangemaster Thompson approached with a thick clipboard. "Gentlemen, this qualification cannot be postponed. If this team fails, replacement Marines will be selected from 2nd Battalion." The threat hung heavy. For these 6 Marines, failure meant the end of everything they'd worked toward. Sabrina stood slowly and walked closer to the firing line. "Excuse me, I don't mean to interrupt, but your wind readings are being affected by thermal inversion." The silence was deafening. Torres and Williams exchanged glances. Davis actually lowered his rifle to stare. "Ma'am, what exactly do you know about long-range ballistics?" Thompson asked, walking closer. Sabrina shrugged. "I just noticed things. The flags at 800 yards show one wind pattern. But look at the grass on that ridge at 1,000 yards. It's bending the opposite direction. The hot air rising from those rocks create a rolling current that reverses every 45 seconds. Listen, lady," Reeves said, professional pride stinging. "We have actual scientific equipment. We don't need folk wisdom. Your equipment reads surface wind," Sabrina continued calmly. "But bullets fly through 3 dimensions. At this altitude, with this terrain, you've got at least 3 distinct wind layers between here and that target." Williams lowered his scope and actually looked where she was pointing. "Holy cow, she's right. Look at the mirage patterns, completely different directions at different distances. The thermal layer is definitely moving opposite to surface wind," Torres confirmed through her spotting scope. "Because you're looking at data instead of reading the environment," Sabrina replied. "Your computers calculate theoretical ballistics, but they can't feel the mountain breathing." As she spoke, she unconsciously shifted into parade rest, feet shoulder-width apart, weight forward, hands clasped behind her back. Military bearing, ingrained through years of training. Williams noticed. "Sarge, look at how she's standing." Torres felt a chill. That wasn't civilian posture. That was military discipline. Ma'am, Thompson said slowly. Where did you learn about wind reading and ballistics? Books mostly. I've always been interested in precision shooting. She turned to look at the target, and a movement revealed a glimpse of what looked like a scar beneath her long sleeves. Your biggest problem is fighting the wind instead of working with it. Those thermal currents are predictable. Every 40 to 50 seconds, you get a 3-second window where the wind layers align. You're saying we need to time our shots? Davis asked. I'm saying stop trusting your computers and start trusting your eyes. Watch the mirage. Really watch it. See how it pulses? That's your countdown timer. Ma'am, I'm going to have to insist you return to your duties, Reeves said. Of course, Gunny. But as she walked away, Torres called after her. Wait, you said you could hit all 3 targets with 1 shot. What did you mean? Sabrina paused. Ricochet ballistics. If you understand the angles and target materials, one properly placed shot can create a chain reaction. The Marines stared in stunned silence. Ricochet ballistics was advanced military science studied by special operations units. Ma'am, Thompson said, voice taking on a formal tone, I think we need to continue this conversation. Would you mind if I asked to see some identification? Something flickered across Sabrina's features. Calculation, like a chess player realizing the game had changed. She produced a contractor ID badge. Sabrina Williams, GS 7 Maintenance Specialist. I've been working on base about 18 months. Thompson examined it carefully. It looked legitimate, but something felt off. 18 months, he repeated, and you've developed expertise in advanced ballistics. I'm a fast learner. Meanwhile, Williams had been thinking about the wind patterns. Against Reeves's disapproval, he began timing the thermal cycles she described. After 2 minutes, he saw the pattern. Gunny, I think she's right about the wind cycles. Corporal Williams, you will not adjust your firing solution based on advice from a civilian contractor, Reeves snapped. But Torres had been watching too. Sarge, the mirage pattern definitely cycles every 48 seconds with a brief alignment moment. Tell you what, Sabrina said, voice taking on a different quality. Give me 1 shot at your target, and I'll prove what I'm talking about. Reeves laughed harshly. Ma'am, we can't just hand rifles to civilians. I have a hunting rifle in my truck. Nothing fancy, just something I use for deer hunting, but I bet I can demonstrate these principles. Thompson considered. Technically, no regulation prevented a contractor from demonstrating civilian marksmanship skills. What exactly are you proposing? 1 shot at your target. If I miss, I'll apologize and get back to gardening. If I hit, maybe you'll consider there's something to what I've been saying. Ma'am, Davis interjected, that target is at 1,700 yards. Over a mile. Most hunting rifles aren't even capable of that range. Most aren't, Sabrina agreed. But mine's been modified. Thompson and Reeves exchanged glances. All right, but we do this properly. Safety protocols will be strictly observed. You'll need to provide proof your weapon is properly registered. Of course. Give me a minute. As she walked toward the parking area, Williams shook his head. This is either going to be the most impressive thing we've ever seen or the most embarrassing. Torres raised her binoculars. Guys, you need to see this. Sabrina was opening what appeared to be a custom gun case from her truck, military-grade transportation equipment. That's not a standard hunting rifle case, Davis observed. Corporal Williams, contact base security and verify that contractor's clearance status, Thompson ordered. Before Williams could make the call, Sabrina was walking back, carrying her rifle case. Her movements were different now, more purposeful, more precise. Thompson inspected the weapon. It was based on a Remington 700 action, but extensively modified. Custom carbon fiber stock, heavy match-grade barrel, high-end precision optic. Holy cow, Williams whispered. That's not a hunting rifle. That's a precision rifle system. Ma'am, this is quite impressive. Where did you acquire it? Built it myself. Took about 2 years. It shoots sub-minute of angle groups at 1,000 yards. Reeves felt his skepticism wavering. This was clearly the product of extensive knowledge. All right, Thompson said finally. Range safety rules in effect. You'll have 1 shot. If you hit, we'll discuss wind reading. If you miss, we return to standard protocols. Sabrina nodded, taking the rifle and performing a quick function check with movements that were definitely not casual. "Before I shoot," she said, "I want everyone to understand what's about to happen." She pointed toward the range. "Behind that target at 1,700 yards, there's a steel plate at 2,000 yards. And beyond that, a third target at 2,200 yards. The three targets are positioned in a rough line." "You're talking about hitting three targets with one bullet?" Torres asked incredulously. "Ricochet ballistics. If you understand the angles, target materials, and can read the wind correctly, it's theoretically possible." "Ma'am, that's not theoretically possible," Davis said. "That's practically impossible. The physics are complicated but manageable. You need to account for angle of incidence, target material hardness, bullet construction, and environmental factors. But it can be done." Thompson realized this had moved far beyond simple marksmanship. "Ma'am, I need to ask directly, what is your background?" For a long moment, Sabrina didn't answer. "I've had some training. More than most." It was a non-answer. But before Thompson could press further, Sabrina was moving toward the firing position with economy of motion that spoke of thousands of hours of practice. "I need about 2 minutes to read the wind conditions," she said, settling behind the scope. "This shot requires timing the thermal cycles." The Marines watched as Sabrina began what appeared to be meditation. Her eyes moved constantly, tracking wind flags, grass movement, heat mirage patterns across the entire range. "Thermal inversion completing its cycle," she murmured. "Surface wind steady at 14 miles per hour from northwest. Mid-level crosswind approximately 8 miles per hour from southwest. High-level flow minimal, maybe 2 miles per hour." Williams grabbed his spotting scope. "How can you tell all that just by looking?" "Practice. When you stop trusting machines and start trusting your eyes, you begin to see differently." "Wind cycle approaching convergence point," Sabrina announced. 30 seconds. She adjusted her scope slightly, making minute corrections based on calculations happening in her head. Her breathing slowed. 15 seconds. The entire range went silent. 5, 4, 3, 2. The rifle fired with a sharp crack. Through their scopes, the Marines watched the bullet's path. 1,700 yards away, the first target rang with a solid hit. But instead of absorbing the bullet's energy, the steel plate deflected it at a precise angle. Clang. 2,000 yards. Another perfect hit. Another calculated deflection. Clang. 2,200 yards. The final target sang out across the valley. 3 targets. 1 shot. Perfect execution. "Good Lord," Thompson whispered. That's not possible." Sabrina worked the bolt, ejecting the spent case and engaging the safety. "Wind reading. When you understand the environment, you work with it instead of against it." But the Marines weren't looking at her anymore. They were staring at something else. Something revealed when Sabrina's shirt had shifted during the shooting position. Underneath the civilian clothing was unmistakably a tactical vest. And on that vest was a patch that made Thompson's blood run cold. Delta Force. Special Operations Aviation Regiment. And below that, a name tape, Williams. "Ma'am," Thompson said slowly, voice taking on a different tone, "I think we need to have a conversation about who you really are." Before Sabrina could respond, the distinctive sound of rotors began echoing through the valley. A helicopter was approaching fast, flying low in tactical profile. Williams grabbed his radio. "Whiskey Jack range control. We have unscheduled air traffic approaching." The response crackled through. "Whiskey Jack range. This is Sword 66. Emergency priority flight with Colonel Hayes aboard. Clear the range immediately and prepare for command consultation." The UH-60 Blackhawk settled onto the landing zone. Before the engines wound down, figures emerged. Colonel Hayes in battle dress, the base sergeant major, and 2 individuals in civilian clothes with federal agent bearing. "What the hell is going on?" Reeves muttered. "Agent Williams," Colonel Hayes called out while still 50 yards away. "We need to talk. Now." "Agent Williams. Not Contractor Williams. Agent Williams." Thompson approached Sabrina. "Ma'am, I think I owe you an apology. We had no idea." "You weren't supposed to," Sabrina replied calmly. The cover was working perfectly until your Marines started having problems with wind reading. Her entire demeanor shifted, posture straightened, movements became precise. When she spoke, her voice carried authority that hadn't been there before. "Colonel Hayes," she said with a slight nod. "I assume my cover's been blown." "Completely," Hayes replied. "Agent Williams, meet Gunnery Sergeant Reeves and his Force Recon team. Gentlemen, meet Special Agent Sabrina Williams, Defense Intelligence Agency, currently assigned to Operation Ghostwalker." The words hit like physical blows. Defense Intelligence Agency. Operation Ghostwalker. Operation Ghostwalker, Torres repeated, voice barely a whisper. "Classified," one of the civilian agents replied curtly. "What's important is that Agent Williams' cover has been compromised, which creates significant operational problems." But Hayes wasn't finished. "Gunnery Sergeant Reeves, your conduct this morning represents the most serious breach of operational security protocols I've witnessed in 25 years of service." Reeves stammered. "Sir, we had no way of knowing. You had no way of knowing because you failed to follow basic courtesy and respect protocols with base personnel." Hayes cut him off sharply. "Your aggressive treatment of someone you assumed was just a janitor demonstrates exactly the kind of prejudice that has no place in the modern Marine Corps. Agent Williams' mission required months of careful positioning. Your actions this morning compromised 18 months of intelligence gathering and put a valuable national security asset at risk." Thompson stepped forward. "Sir, the team was under pressure to qualify. That pressure does not excuse treating anyone with disrespect and hostility," Hayes replied coldly. "This incident will be thoroughly investigated and appropriate disciplinary action taken." Sabrina continued packing her equipment, but constantly scanned surroundings with tactical awareness far beyond any maintenance worker. "Sir," Williams interrupted, "what exactly is Operation Ghostwalker?" "That's classified above your clearance level, Corporal. What I can tell you is that Agent Williams has been operating undercover on this base for 18 months as part of a national security operation I cannot discuss." "The shooting demonstration," Reeves said slowly. "That wasn't just showing off, was it?" Sabrina looked up, meeting his eyes. "Your team was having problems qualifying for deployment. That affects readiness, which affects mission capability. I couldn't let good Marines fail because they were overthinking equipment instead of trusting training." There was genuine concern in her tone. Not cold analysis, but investment in fellow warriors. "Ma'am," Davis ventured, "when you said you'd had some training, exactly what kind of training?" Before Sabrina could answer, the sergeant major stepped forward with a manila folder. "Agent Williams is a graduate of the Defense Intelligence Agency's Advanced Reconnaissance Course, the Army's Special Operations Target Interdiction Course, and the Navy's Special Warfare Development Group Precision Marksmanship Program. She holds expert ratings on 14 different weapon systems and has completed more than 40 operational deployments in 12 countries." The silence was profound. These Marines who considered themselves elite operators were realizing they were in the presence of someone whose qualifications made their training look elementary. "Holy cow," Williams whispered. "Ma'am, why were you working as a maintenance contractor?" Cover for status. The mission required someone who could observe base operations without drawing attention. A civilian contractor with grounds maintenance responsibilities has access to virtually every area, can be present during training without suspicion, and can gather intelligence on operational readiness without anyone asking questions. Thompson was beginning to understand. "Ma'am, when you were watching our training, you weren't just being helpful. You were conducting some kind of assessment. Among other things, Force Recon teams represent significant strategic assets. When a team begins experiencing unusual training problems, that becomes a matter of interest to certain agencies." Hayes consulted his watch. "Agent Williams, the situation has changed. Your original mission parameters are no longer viable. We need to relocate you immediately." "Understood, sir. How much time do I have?" 15 minutes to gather essential materials. Transport will be standing by." "Sir," Torres asked hesitantly, "is Agent Williams in some kind of danger?" Hayes and Sabrina exchanged a look. "There are operational concerns. Nothing that affects base security, but Agent Williams' continued presence here is no longer advisable. Sabrina finished packing and stood, slinging the case over her shoulder. Before I go, let me leave you with something that might help with your qualification shoots. She walked to the equipment locker and pulled out paper, sketching quickly. Wind reading isn't about equipment. It's about understanding that air moves in layers like a river with currents at different depths. Your computers measure surface conditions, but bullets fly through three-dimensional space. The sketch showed the range profile with arrows indicating wind flow at different altitudes, thermal currents, pressure differentials. At this range in these mountains, you've got 4 distinct wind environments. Surface wind affected by ground heating, mid-level crosswinds influenced by valley shape, high-altitude flow usually steady but weak, and thermal inversion layers that reverse direction cyclically. Williams studied the diagram intently. How do you read all that without instruments? Grass movement for surface wind, mirage patterns for mid-level currents, dust movement for pressure differentials, and timing. Thermal cycles are predictable if you know what to look for. She handed him the sketch. Practice reading the environment instead of reading the computer. Your equipment should confirm what your eyes are telling you, not replace what your brain can calculate. Torres looked up from the diagram. Ma'am, this is graduate-level meteorology applied to ballistics. Where did you learn this? Trial and error. When your life depends on making impossible shots in impossible conditions, you learn to see things differently. Hayes checked his watch again. Agent Williams, we need to move. Copy that, sir. Sabrina turned back to the Marines. Gentlemen, you're good Marines with good instincts. Trust your training. Trust your eyes. Stop overthinking your equipment. You'll make those shots. She paused, then added with evident sincerity, it's been an honor working alongside you, even if you didn't know it. Thompson extended his hand. Ma'am, it's been an honor having you here. I wish we could have known sooner. That was the point, Sabrina replied, shaking his hand firmly. But maybe it worked out for the best. Your team learned something important today. As a command group prepared to leave, Reeves found himself with one burning question. Agent Williams, when you said you could hit 3 targets with 1 shot, had you ever actually done that before? Or was this morning the first time? Sabrina paused, a shadow crossing her features. Gunnery Sergeant, there are some things about my operational history I can't discuss, but I will say this. The shot I made this morning was significantly easier than some I've had to make in the field. The statement hung in the air like smoke, suggesting experiences beyond normal human capability. Take care of yourselves, she added, then turned to follow Colonel Hayes toward the waiting helicopter. The Marines watched in silence as the group walked away, taking with them the mystery woman who had appeared in their lives for a few hours and changed everything they thought they knew. As the helicopter lifted off, the 6th Force Recon Marines stood looking at the targets she had hit with a single impossible shot. Well, Davis said finally, I guess we know why our wind reading was giving us problems. Yeah, Williams agreed, still holding the sketch. We were trying to fight the mountain instead of understanding it. Torres picked up her rifle, chambering around. All right, let's see if we can apply what we just learned. But as the Marines prepared to resume training, each carried the knowledge that they had just encountered someone operating at a level of skill most people never knew existed. Sabrina Williams had given them a glimpse into a world where impossible shots were routine, where covers could be maintained for years, and where the difference between success and failure was measured in lives rather than scores. The wind patterns she had described were still there, flowing in their complex, three-dimensional dance. But now the Marines could see them, could read them, could work with them. And somewhere in the distance, the sound of helicopter rotors was fading as Agent Williams disappeared back into the shadows, leaving behind only questions, a shooting lesson, and a lingering sense that they had been part of something much larger than a simple training exercise. The impossible shot would be talked about for years. But the real lesson about reading the environment, trusting instincts, understanding there was always more to learn, would shape how these Marines approached every mission for the rest of their careers.